We're in Brixton in South London, and I'm particularly excited today. Something that I love about these cribs is often I get to meet heroes, often I get to meet people that I'm kind of friends with. But with this gentleman, I'm just a massive fan. You know, he's spanned many genres. You know, I used to listen to his albums incessantly, but he's also done loads and loads of amazing film scores. So it's really exciting to come and have a look around his crib. Is he in here? Hi, Nitin.
Hi, Christian.
How you doing? Great to see you. Thanks for having us.
All right, sorry, the door's a bit heavy.
Bit of a heavy door. So this is, how long have you been here?
Oh, God, about 10 years now. I think it's something like that. So,
right.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. Sorry, this is the main control room.
Excellent.
This is where I'm actually working all the time. And I normally I've got everything set up so I can kind of, just get into things. You know, when I used to make albums back in the 90s, I'd be working from my bedroom and I had a Kenwood stereo mixer. Well, not even Kenwood mixer, a Kenwood stereo system with a mixer, with a Pro Mix 01 mixer.
Right.
And it was kind of, I didn't even have a computer, so I was just working, and I did albums like Beyond Skin and all of those just without anything apart from, just a stereo system. And
so what did you use to record onto?
Well, it was just onto a DMT-8, I think it was Fostex DMT-8, which was kind of, and then I'd kind of just bounce it down onto, I think I bounced down from the Fostex onto a DAT recorder.
DAT,
yeah. So and that was it. And I had this Gem S2 keyboard. And, it was kind of, and it was a really pretty primitive system, but it was kind of, it worked for me, and it was all about convenience and everything. So I like the idea of everything being set up in a way that I feel familiar with and feel relaxed with, that I can just pick something up and just get into it.
So what is your first instrument?
I started off as a classical pianist, and I kind of used to play. So I started from the age of 5, and I did all the grades, and was a jazz pianist as well when I was 11, and playing with youth orchestras and all kinds of things like that. But then I got into flamenco guitar from the age of about 8 or 9. I kind of got into that in a big way, and then started playing rock guitar and started playing things like Van Halen kind of, covers and all that kind of thing, very odd things. And then I got into Indian classical music a bit later. So I kind of, it was first piano, but I was always just as enthusiastic about every other instrument I picked up, I guess.
I have to admit, I had a business partner who was a songwriting partner, who was mixed race Indian Spanish,
right.
And he was an amazing flamenco guitarist, but all he wanted to make was Metallica. And I just go, your heritage is so interesting. You can combine the flamenco and the Indian stuff, the cajon and the tablas and all of this kind of stuff. And your album came out, and I was like,
yeah, well, that was the thing. So I like combining, as you know, lots of different influences in my own stuff, and I guess all of that kind of worked well, because the people I was interested in as film composers from very young age were people who came at things from unusual angles. People like Ennio Morricone, for most people, like a film scoring god. But
Lalo Schifrin for me was like, he's a South American composer. I think for me, his opening to Dirty Harry, amazing, really cool.
And with tabla, he
with
used tabla,
exactly. And it's like there's no. And what I love about it is there's no kind of excuse for it. It's just he likes the sound of it.
I covered one of those Dirty Harry tracks with because I went to school with a guy called James Taylor from James Taylor Quartet.
Oh, right,
so we used to play together, and JTQ. So I used to play wah pedal guitar with him for a bit. Yeah, it was great because we recorded that, and I played some tabla on that version as well, which is cool. But yeah, big fan as well.
Amazing. So do you use the desk much?
I'll use it sometimes for 5.1 mixing if we're doing stuff for some films or whatever. And we've got the Air speakers around here, so we can actually set up for 5.1. If I'm just recording into here, then I use it for that and from the live room.
I think one of the problems with working in the box is the temptation to remain in there. So I imagine you have stuff set up so it's a real being able to grab it as opposed to, I'll just get a sample up.
If you have got instruments set up, then you keep that human kind of feeling, and everything comes from a feeling rather than sometimes being seduced by sound. I think quite often it's very easy to be seduced by sound. I mean, your stuff, you know, the Spitfire stuff is very seductive and very beautiful, and you can kind of go, okay, I'm just going to stay in this world and not really come out. But actually, quite often I'll begin from. I mean, I might begin from a piano, but I quite enjoy the tactile nature of starting from
shapes as well. I think you have your go-to shapes, and if you're using, I guess, just one with the keyboard,
you're absolutely right.
I guess different guitars with different necks, different tunings. It's discovery.
Exactly. Well, I mean, over here, I'll show you. I've got these guitars. Like I've got the Baker, which was actually made for me, which is fiberglass. So it's got a
Fiberglass.
Yeah. So whoops, thanks. Needs a bit of a tune. It might not be exactly right because I haven't got a tuner on it, but I can. So you can play. You can play kind of more resonant type of Indian. So it's got a very kind of resonant sound to it, and there's a guitarist called U Srinivas who was a South Indian guitarist, a Carnatic guitarist who kind of showed me this particular tuning. So you can actually get into using. It kind of has that resonance, and I work with people like Anushka Shankar and so on, and it kind of allows me to kind of to empathise with her way of playing and play along with her in a way that feels, or any sitarist or any classical musician, to kind of play in a way that gives that drone sound at the same time as getting into the feeling of Indian classical rags. So this is C, G, C, G, C, C. So just that simple, just literally going up in fifths. It was amazing. James Baker, who's a quite well-known luthier, he made this for me quite a number of years ago after watching me perform a few gigs, and he said, "Can I make you a guitar?" So it was amazing. Yeah.
I see you have a charango.
Yeah, yes, favourite. I do. Yes, so have a bash if you want.
I can't play them, but I do admire them.
Again, I mean, this is great. I mean, I use this. There's people like Gustavo Santaolalla, who's I'm a massive fan of in the way he layers up guitars and different instruments. So in film, I mean, it's lovely and you've got that mandolin swarm kind of plug-in, which I think is lovely, combined with something like this and a ukulele and a nylon strung guitar. You can build these really beautiful layers of sound, and kind of, especially using tremolos as well, which I use quite a lot in the way I play. So it kind of gives a shimmery kind of sound that gives us a feeling of movement, especially if you're working underneath strings. I'll do that quite often.
And I think that people shouldn't be mistaken by stuff that look like toys. Ukuleles can be stunningly beautiful.
Amazing.
You know? I mean, like
I don't very often strum them. Yeah, just kind of like little riffs, which will be kind of quite simple and kind of replicate kora. For example, there's kinds of African flavours which I love, and I love using lots of these. For example, in the Human Planet series, I scored quite often different time signatures juxtaposed against each other and cross rhythms, using quite a lot of ukulele and different strung instruments to give this kind of constant feeling of movement, and it worked really well in quite a number of places. So I find that's very interesting to work with.
So I'm amazing to see that you've got this fluid workflow in here. What kind of determines, other than you getting musicians in, what determines you having to use the live room? For example,
if I'm working very fast on a film score, then I might get down the ideas in here, and then I'll kind of think, okay, maybe just to get approval stage, I might say, okay, if I've got 10 cues to get approved, and I've got to get them done really fast for a particular series or film, then I'll get them down very quickly like this. And they sound good, but they don't sound quite as nailed as when you go in there in a really nice live room and record with the correct spacing and right screening and so on. So it's kind of and the right mics. You can't really ever get that same quality of sound with an acoustic DI'd as you can in a live room with a great microphone. So
you usually replace everything. Yeah.
I do some things. I mean, anything acoustic I will do. I've even got an electric ukulele, for example. So I DI things initially to keep that workflow speed. Yeah. And I think that's really important for me is efficiency, getting things down quickly while they're in your head. Because if I'm spending loads of time kind of worrying, and I work with great engineers, Harry, who's been with me a while now, is a fantastic engineer. Most of the people I've worked with come from Huddersfield University. In fact, all of them have, thinking about it, because they all start off interning with me. And then I try and kind of work with them in the future after they finish their degrees. And he's fantastic, and he knows the studio really well. If I go through to the studio, I still don't lose a lot of time because he knows the setups. We've got it set up in such a way that I can just get into something pretty quickly.
I guess from time to time you get those happy accidents that no matter how much you try.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I mean that's happened a number of times. I did a film earlier this year called The Girl from Mogadishu, and it's a true story, very powerful. But I found that it was, because I was responding to a lot of the visceral nature of a lot of the scenes, I didn't want to kind of spend too much time in my head thinking about technicalities. I wanted to just get into the feeling of it because it moves you, and as soon as you're moved, I want to get music down because I think it has to come from the emotion first and your immediate response to the emotion.
Fantastic. Can we have a look at the live room?
Another heavy door.
So when you... Oh, it's brilliant. What a lovely sized space.
Yeah, it's really nice.
And it's got a little something, isn't it?
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
Not totally dead.
Yeah. Again, it's set up in such a way that I can get into things really easily. I mean, I've got this desk here, which I use for if I have a band in. I mean, I use it for rehearsals as well.
Right.
We've got a tour coming up next year, and we will definitely be using this space for that. And I've got everything set up in a way that I can just jump onto instruments. I mean. Yeah. So it's kind of, it's great with the Rhodes sound, as you can hear. It's got a very kind of gritty tone to it, but then you've also got piano sound as well. Yeah. So it's got a very nice kind of piano feeling to it, which is again because of the valve. I think it really helps it. It doesn't sound too digital, and it plays really well. And the reason I got it in red and black is because we played the Royal Albert Hall quite a few times, so I just thought it'd be a really cool instrument out there. Exactly, yeah. And so just a few things. I mean, like this, I remember kind of using for the sub bass on it at the Jazz Cafe years ago, and it made the whole place shake, which was incredible. That tiny little keyboard, and I mean, I've always been into synthesizers and keyboards. I mean, I had to sort of stop using so many synths because they would just take over my life. So I just have a few things now.
Yes, I've found that they can be quite an expensive habit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and so,
I've got lots of, as you can see, lots of tablas and this. I mean, in India, clay pot you call guttam. I can't remember what this is called. Udu or something like that it might be. It's kind of like got a. So it's got quite a nice kind of feel to it. You kind of play it sitting down. But I use this quite a lot for its kind of, and again on the Human Planet series, I played quite a lot of percussion on that, which was really useful. Lots of doublers, and I use the Adams speakers in here. We have a little separate setup, so if Harry wants to come back here and work, if we're working on a number of projects, he's got a separate little space he can come into. This is a plate reverb that's really nice, and is a beautiful one, yeah.
And it's on, always a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if singers, particularly, I mean, sometimes we'll record the plate reverb from here as well, but sometimes we just use the software ones that we've got. I mean, it depends. what we're going for, and it's about the quality of sound and the type of project we're working on. But yeah, that's lovely. Sometimes I use a lexicon in there as well.
You started out as classical piano and then into jazz. What kind of was the spark that made you become interested in flamenco and open up that whole world for you?
My dad's record collection was the biggest inspiration for me because he listened to music from everywhere. So he had flamenco albums, in his collection, but he also, Miles Davis, A Kind of Blue, he had that album, and I remember listening to that over and over. He had music from Ravi Shankar, and I was saying it was quite odd because with Panditji Ravi Shankar, when I was 7 years old, I heard an album that my dad was playing on the record player, and I said to my dad, how are they doing that? And he said, what? And by that time I was playing a lot of piano and a tiny bit of guitar, and he said, he was confused by what I was asking. I said, well, they make it sound like he's playing at incredible speed, and he said, no, that's how he plays. He's an amazing sitar player. And I said, well, no one can play that fast. It's impossible for anyone to move their hands like that. I couldn't believe it. And I kept going back over the same part of the record, trying to understand how he was playing this one bit, and spent ages just trying to play this one bit of a record and on the guitar. And, what was weird for me was I was actually with Ravi Shankar when he died many years later in San Diego. And I remember holding his arm and thinking, this is the same arm that inspired me when I was 7 years old in my dad's, in my dad's record collection, and it was a very powerful moment. So it's odd when with the records you listen to as a kid and things that inspire you, then to meet those people years later, like meeting John McLaughlin, ending up having dinner with him one time, or
Friday night in San Francisco.
Yeah,
that was a moment for me.
And that's another thing, with Paco de Lucia.
Absolutely.
I loved flamenco. Again, my dad had flamenco albums, but then as a Beatles fan, years later meeting Paul McCartney. So when he came into, so I was doing a remix for him back in the 90s, and he came into this tiny little bedsit I was in, and it was just so surreal that he walked in, because it's like seeing somebody from your imagination just come out of your imagination and come into your real world. And he was talking. He said, "Oh, I used to live in a place like this, and I wrote a track, in a bedsit a bit like this. I'll play it to you. It was called Scrambled Eggs, and of course it was yesterday. So he played it on that acoustic guitar that I showed you, and it was like, So I've had all these really weird experiences of people or characters from my dad's record collection coming to life later on. But I guess my dad's record collection was the place that I trawled for musical influences, and because it was so diverse. He loved Cuban music, he loved flamenco, he loved music from Africa. He had such diverse taste, and so for me, I didn't really have that thing of differentiating, because I was kind of like a geeky kind of musician who just liked sitting and practicing and trying things out, and I'd hear a bit of music and think, okay, how do you do that? So it was more that, really.
Amazing, fantastic.